I think the first kind of serious thing I wrote, my girlfriend was pregnant, I was 18, and my girlfriend was pregnant at the time, she was 18 too. And I was in the doctor's office and I heard a baby cry. And I wrote right there and then, you know, about that baby crying and thinking about my girlfriend raising this child, and that she's got to learn to do a lot of things because we were so young or whatever. I actually, after I spoke to you, I contacted the young girl that was born, Patricia, and asked her to write that particular poem out. I got parts of it in my head, but I don't have the whole thing of it, right? But I gave it to her then when Tricia was born, and in a card, and had it all done up, handwritten. Then we didn't have no computers back then. But Lord, that's 40 years ago, sort of thing, right? You know. And Dad was really, really sick. He ended up dying with cancer in 2010. There's a book, Galway Bay, it's over on my bookshelf there, that he was reading. And I used to go in then every day when his cancer got worse than that and sit with him and read Galway Bay. And I had never read that book before, even though I read tons of books, because I'd read one and then Dad would phone me and, did you read this? Nonfiction. Like even I started a nonfiction story about Newfoundland and Labrador, got so pissed off reading it that I could no longer read that book because it upset me so much, that I was so upset with everything that went on before I was even born, before Newfoundland, when they were their own. And I got really, and I couldn't follow through. And I've read some of the stories that are written about Newfoundland and St. John's and how it was back in the day, where there wasn't a lot of troubles and that. I'm okay with them, but the ones that show us as a stupid province and how we were used and agree, I'm not good with reading stories like that. So I stay away from nonfiction. I read mostly fiction because I can get lost in it. I usually write when I get ticked off about or upset or think about something. Like the other day, there was a young man that died of suicide. And suicide's a horrible, horrible thing. And I don't think anybody that contemplates suicide ever thinks about who they're leaving behind and what they're leaving behind. So I wrote a little bit of poem about that. Like, you don't understand what you're doing. You have to rethink. Like, we need to get you help. If you're suicidal, we need. Now that'll go nowhere, Clarence. My poems go nowhere. Like, there's some that I'll print and I'll look at it and read it and that's pretty cool. Now I like that one, and I'll put it on Facebook. But hundreds and hundreds of my poems are just poems, just out of my head, on paper, done. I think my poems allow me freedom out of my head. I really get jumbled up. Like when I did Access Denied and I was watching it on TV, and that's all it was about, was what people, like my poem is just saying what they said. It's just that I put a little rhyme to the end of it. And when I was watching that, it made me kind of angry that things were happening, but it gets jumbled in my head, and it stayed in my head for 2 days. And finally it like, okay, I got to get this out. Like, I got to get these words out of my, and I put them down on paper. I use my iPad for everything, and then they're gone. The booze didn't care.
So your writing was a form of therapy?
Absolutely. And I don't know if I write more, you know, because I told you, I think one time before that, it's only been in the last couple of years that I've really taken an interest in what I write, that someone else might like to read that. Do you know what I mean? Like before I just wrote and it was right. Now it's like, wow, someone might want to read that. Like, okay, that might make sense to someone. Like, okay, my girlfriend whose son died, I wrote a poem about her family. Well, I have to go up and see her next week. He's been dead a year, but I've never shared that poem. I have to do that with her because I have to let her know this is about your son. Like, I got to share that now. So now I feel in my head that it's not all just hobbly gobbly. It's like some of that stuff is pretty cool.
So I guess your audience has actually changed, and at one point in time you're writing more for yourself and expressing internally the struggles that you're going through. But right now it has changed, it has evolved. I mean, you still talk about family and you still talk about your friends and experiences. But it has widened to local events and current affairs and stuff like that.
More so than it ever was before. I think my writing, and if you read any of it, if you notice, Clarence, my writing is all about me. If you look at those poems, it's all about me. It's how I feel. It's how I react. It's how I want to get that message out. But it's not about how you're feeling about anything, or it's like, you know, the story about the little girl who crawled up in my lap down to Gander Medical Clinic. It was like, holy crap. That was all about me and how I felt and what it did for me and how it made me feel. The woman who had the aneurysm that came out and told me I have to go to St. John's now after being bullied at work for ages and going in to get off work in the medical center. Like, her story was still about me. It was my release of that, all that, to get it out so that I could kind of let it go.